3 o'clock, so we're going to start the presentation momentarily. Okay. Okay, everybody. Thank you. Are we live, Robert? Okay. Hello. Knock, knock, knock. Well, we had a big room set up, but not a lot of people here today, but we will go ahead and do the presentation. And we have people online as well. So what we'd like to do is go through the budget presentation first. And then when we're complete, we'll have a question and answer period as well. For anyone who has their phone on. I'd ask you to just put it on silent for the presentation. So we're here today. Next slide, Robert, please. To go over the 2023 budget presentation. And we'll first go over what the agenda sort of for today will be. Wait till you get to the next slide up. So we'll go over the process of how we do the budget here within Conisty. We will talk about and introduce the CFPOA Finance Committee members. We'll have an executive summary of all the things that impacted the 2023 budget. We'll have highlights from both an income and expense issue, and then also go over the reserve spending, and then talk about what happens next through our normal process here at Conisty of how budgets are approved. So how do we get to where we are today? And the first step is the board back in July will submit a board guidance letter to the Finance Committee and management of what they would like to at least see or have reviewed during the budget process. We start with myself and the staff driving that budget process in preparation based on the guidance letter. Myself and the controller, Joey, who's back in the back of the room here, we'll get together with all the department managers, each of whom will develop their own budget and present it to us with their changes that they see going forward for next year. The areas that the different departments are administration, security, general maintenance, clubhouse, food and beverage, golf operations, and golf maintenance. And some of those have just all expenses, and some have revenues obviously associated with those departments as well. The Finance Committee, along with the GM and the controller, will then meet separately with each one of the department heads to clarify and review the budget. And then in some cases, we adjust parts of each budget based on that input at that meeting. And then the Finance Committee, along with the general manager, will make a recommendation to the budget to the board of directors, who will then ask us to forward it and make a recommendation to the committee or to the community, which is what we're doing today. I know some of the Finance Committee members are here today. Our chair of the Finance Committee is Bob Coffin. I saw him earlier today. He's in the back of the room back there. We also have the board liaison, who's the treasurer, Bob McGinnis, who's here in the front row. Marty Oliver is here as well. He's on the committee. Steve Meadows, who I do not believe is here. Cara Blanc, I'm not here as well. Keith Butler, Craig Harding, John Harris, and the newest members, Jim Hatch and David Edwards. So what everyone normally comes here to see is the next slide. So for the 2023 budget, basically it looks like we're going to have to come in at approximately a 5.45% increase, which is equal to $195 for an improved lot and $117 for an unimproved lot. This recommended assessment will increase allows us to be consistent with our strategic and comprehensive master plans, our vision, our mission, and sustaining the Conisty lifestyle. One thing that we do here consistently very well each year is to make sure that we're adequately funding our capital reserve and infrastructure reserve funds so that we continue to allow us to continue to have ongoing timely maintenance on our equipment, repair it and or replace it as needed when it becomes obsolete or not in working order anymore. Over the years, we have been trying to reduce the amount that we rely on amenity fees to offset our operational costs. This year it was $50,000 that we took out of the amenity fund to help offset operations. We're recommending to keep that at the $50,000 level going into 2023. We have been trying to reduce that by $25,000 each year. Because years ago we were almost at $300,000. So we've done a really good job of getting to where the operations are funding themselves through the assessment. But obviously this year with the challenge of inflation and supply chain issues and so forth, we want to try to minimize as best we could the overall assessment. So we're recommending to keep that at $50,000. We're also looking at, well, this is for budgetary reasons next year, it's looking like an 8% increase in payroll. The reality on that is we're already there. What's happened over the last second part of this year is anyone we have been able to hire, we've had to hire at a higher rate than what we normally would be paying, which then obviously offsets the fact that we had to make some adjustments in the current employees that have been here for numerous years to make sure that they were at least getting paid more than the people that we're bringing in. So that 8% really is just a carryover from where we are currently within our 2022, not the 22 budget, but the 2022 actual, what we're finding in the labor market. As a side note, if you look back at the August consumer price index, the inflation rate was 8.3%. So it's consistent. Hopefully the good news is for especially the people that are, well, not good news, but the people that may be on Social Security, it looks like they are probably going to get a similar increase as well. It's looking like that's going to be an 8 or 9% increase in your Social Security checks each month as well. So what does this look like when you just look at the overall numbers? For the improved lot, that would bring us to a number of $3,765 for next year, and an unimproved lot at $2,259, and that's the 195 and the 117 that we talked about a few slides ago. So what did we focus on when we were doing the budget? Number one is we always want to make sure that we are managing the CFPOA in a fiscally prudent manner and making sure that our reserves are sufficient to care for what we own and what we plan to do in the future. We like to identify risks that may exist, whether it's reserves, whether it's insurance, policies, investments. We like to maintain and enhance all property values. We also recognize there's a great diversity between all the different individuals that live within the community. We all value and use the community differently. And we have varying degrees of financial stability and disposable income. And in capital items, we always look at, this year we actually did a more in-depth study, but we always look at the capital reserve, making sure that all of our capital items, which is basically any piece of equipment or machinery or computers or whatever that is a value of $2,500 or more and has a useful life of less than 30 years, that we are making sure that we are appropriating the reserve funds to be able to replace those assets as they break down. So looking at a high level of income and expenses, we'll go over that next. So in assessment revenue, we bring in approximately $6 million, $5,941,000. Other income is $3,876,000. That would be golf course income, food and beverage income, rental income, boat storage income. Anything that creates the revenue is all other income. So our total revenue is approximately $10 million, 9.8. Our operating expenses are $7,258,000. And then we transfer out of that assessment that's collected at the beginning of the year, we transfer the appropriate amount into the capital reserve, which in this case, next year would be $2,559,000. That comes out of your assessment and goes into the capital reserve to make sure to shore that up. Then this year, we're going to expend $3.489 million in our reserves, most of that coming from the amenity reserve. Someone might ask, well, how are we only spending that if we just approved a $3.9 million project? But the reality is in the project, you also approved up to $1.75 million loan. The reality is we probably won't need to start taking any of that loan until the end of 2023. So that the total we'll spend over the 7 years will be that 3.5 plus the 1.75. But the question is, how much of the 1.75 will there really be that we'll take out as a loan? So we only accounted for the actual cash going out for 2023, and the loan will be what it will be once we know how much we're going to have to borrow. So when you look at the overall net effect, there's a $930,000 decrease in the overall reserves between capital, infrastructure, and amenities. And most of that obviously going for the Activity Wellness Center. Next slide. So what were all the other individual line items that impacted the overall assessment? So on a positive note, the golf course is looking to bring in another $189,000 going into 2023. So we're looking to increase revenue in the golf operation by 3.19%. Sorry, that will reduce your assessment 3.19% going into 2023. The administration revenue we're projecting to go up $24,000. That is basically the monies we get from boat storage, RV park, and the rental leasing application fee, which we're going up $50 on each one of those as well going into next year. Security is one that looks like a big number. Oh, sorry, not security. The next one is payroll. Overall payroll looks like a big number, $854,000. But out of that 854, almost 500 of that is directly related to security. When the 2022 budget was done and approved going back into 2021, we still had outsourcing of the security personnel. In 2022, we took in-house. So that security contracting number 358 is what we were paying the outsource that to a private agency. So that number obviously gets thrown into the 854 now as a total change of why payroll is so much higher. The biggest change there as well is at that 358, that was our contracted rate with the security provider, but they were never able to fully staff the security operation. Most of the time we never had a rover, and half the time we had to shut down the East Fort gatehouse early, unman it because we didn't have people. We currently have a full staff on the security personnel now, and they're also all on the benefit program where with the outside security agency before they did not have any insurance at all for group health. So that's where that big number is coming from. If you look at, when we look at 2022 payroll to actual payroll to 2023 budget, that number is really not 854. Like I said, the second half of this year, we've already encumbered more payroll because of having to pay more to bring on extra or to bring on additional people. Capital funding each year, we also put in a 3% increase in the capital reserve fund to help keep up with inflation. The reason we only kept this at 3%, even though inflation's running higher, is we always look at this one as it's over a 20-year gap of the table for your reserves. So we look at this and say, what is historically inflation run over an extended period of time? That's why we're using the 3%. The same on the infrastructure funding is the same way, and that's $22,000. And then all other charges are down $3,000. So all those numbers together net out to the 5.45% increase. A lot of numbers, lots of numbers. So this is probably what I call the most logical slide on the presentation because it sort of makes it easy to determine and see where your money is going. So you see, out of your assessment, 25% of your assessment is going into the reserve funding, which is going to help offset all the assets, to replace all the assets that the CFPOA owns. Administration is 22% of that total pie. General maintenance is community maintenance, Spencer's crew, that's 21%. This building and the wellness center attribute 10%. Golf contributes 6% to that. Security 9%, and food and beverage 8%. So that sort of puts you in a logical way of looking at, if you're going to make any impact, the real impact would have to be in reserve or administration to make any real impact on your assessment, because the other numbers are relatively pretty small. And if we put those percentages in dollars, which is the next slide, you'll sort of get an idea of what we're talking about. So for your $3,765 assessment, $931 of it is going to your capital infrastructure funding. Administration is $837. General maintenance, community maintenance is 778. The clubhouse and pool, and clubhouse's pool really should be clubhouse, pool, wellness center, tennis courts, pickleball courts, all that comes out of clubhouse pretty much. So that's 363. Security is 348. Food and beverage operation, 294. And golf, 214 to get you to the $3,765. So our number one overall expense every year is always the same, is your employee expense. Currently, I think the number is 90 almost now, Joey. I mean, it fluctuates. People quit, hire, you quit. We're about 90 FTEs, full-time equivalents. We used to be about 80, but now we have 10 in-house from security. So even with that, you'll see that historically, going back to 2016, we've always run at 68, 66, 65, roughly always anywhere from 60 to 70%. The number is now 73%, but realizing that that number also is pulling in almost $500,000 more in security costs that we didn't have before. So overall, if you took security out of here, this number would be lower in 2023 than it would have been if you were trying to look at a comparison to 2022. So from an efficiency standpoint, we are getting the most out of the people we have. So looking at the two revenue producing areas, we'll start with the golf operation. You'll see we have 2021, 2020, 21, 22, 23, just to give us a comparison. So you go back into 2020, we brought in $770,000 in revenue. And each year you see that's increased significantly each year to looking to where we're hoping to get to $1.2 million in 2023. So you look over that 4 years, you're looking at almost a $500,000 increase in revenue in a golf operation, which is directly contributable to the driving range projects, the irrigation project, and then Tom, the golf course superintendent, has had the course in great shape, and Kurt and his people have more of a friendly atmosphere within the golf operation, been very successful. So you net it all out, and you'll see also that we've increased rounds significantly. So overall, you go back 4 years ago, we've been able to reduce the offset of the subsidy in golf by over $200,000 over the last 4 years. So that's been a nice bonus to have to help offset some of the assessment increases. If we go next slide, Robert. So how have we been able to do this over time? The improved golf conditions we talked about, the capital improvements in the staff, rounds are up 8% over 2021 already and 43% over 2020. We've raised the golf membership dues by 8% over the years. The golf memberships now are at 169 versus a budget of 159. We raised the range membership from 425 to 525 and 450 to 550. And now we have 85 range members as well, where last year we had 75, I think. And then we are looking at raising all outside green fees $5, which doesn't sound like a lot, but that's almost, depending on the time of year, that's about a 10% increase on average for outside play. And, we've not seen any resistance right now in pricing for the golf course. We're basically spending zero money marketing. All the play is basically repeat play from outside of people that have played and just keep coming back. So we don't really need to find any new people to play right now. So in food and beverage is always an interesting one because we have to try to figure out what we're comparing it to. We're hoping when we get into 2023, whether it be the pandemic and hopefully, you hate to say it this way, but economically, if you are in a recession or going towards a recession, it might become a different market where it becomes more of an employer market. Because right now we're definitely in an employee market. So if we're in an employer market, hopefully by 2023, we can get back to what we'd consider normal with having enough staff to be able to do a fully functional clubhouse. And the last time we had a fully functional clubhouse was 2019. So that's why we're using those numbers for 2023. And you'll see the revenue side, the cost of goods sold, employee expenses, and other expenses. And, this number of going from 459 to 468 is almost, and you compare it to 2019, which is 4 years ago, will be 4 years in 2023. That's almost all payroll related when you see it, right? So that's just strictly the cost of payroll in today's market compared to what it was in 2019. And I'm not sure there's an easy way to change that right now. So in food and beverage, we base that, like I said, on the 2019 numbers. If you look at that pie chart I showed you, it shows that 8% of your assessment is going towards the food and beverage operation. And when you do a comparison on this, especially to what is called RSM McGladrey, who does surveys all the clubs in Florida, which is almost 1,000 clubs. Most of them are running everything from 19% of their assessment going to food and beverage, the lowest one at 13%. So even at, the lowest club in Florida, we're still 5% better than what the average club is doing in food and beverage. So we do have a relatively efficient food and beverage operation comparably. So reserves, again, this is one of the biggest areas where your money goes. What are our reserves? So we have 4 reserves. The amenity reserve is the Big Daddy reserve. That is where we have most of our money, and it's collected in the amenity fees that are collected every time a house sells within the community. Lot sales go into that as well, which this year I think we are almost at what, 600, 700? Joey, do you know? 7. Almost at $700,000 in lot sales this year. So that all goes in there. And then when you combine a lot, which is a $10,000 cost, we take 25% of that, and that goes to the amenity fund as well. And what does that money do? That money goes to all the things that we've been doing, whether it be the current projects down at the Question Center, the fence that's going up along Walnut Hollow, the expansion for the storage that we're going to do here at Cherokee, the Activity and Wellness Center. It's designed to be used for any type of new construction or to improve or maintain amenities that we currently have within the CFPOA. The capital reserve is, again, all of our quote unquote assets that are worth over $2,500 and have a useful life less than 30 years. Just to give you a ballpark figure, just in community maintenance between all our dump trucks and excavators and snow plows, we have roughly $4 to $5 million worth of equipment down at equipment maintenance area. And we need to replace that over the years. In the last 3 years, we've had to replace the paving unit, which was almost $300,000. And we had to replace one of our other piece of road equipment, which is almost $300,000 as well. So this is not cheap equipment to maintain. But if you were to try to hire out and do 5 miles of re-asphalting every year and have a contractor come in and do that, it would cost you a fortune compared to what we can do it for. So long-term, it's still a good investment. And then you'll see other items up there. Again, we just sort of doing a general list. The infrastructure reserve is paid out of your, one more back, sorry. Infrastructure reserve is paid out of your assessment as well. That is what's used to help maintain your dams, our roads, our culverts, and forest management. It's basically what I call a prepaid expense, really. And we, just to give you some general information, we spend around $400,000 a year on road maintenance, about $50,000 a year on forest management. And culverts, we spend about $100,000 a year repairing and replacing culverts as well. And then the emergency fund has been in existence for a while now. It has approximately $1 million in it, and it's capped. It's based on a percentage of quote unquote 2 months worth of operating expenses. And that would be used just for the purpose that we say, an emergency, ice storm, wildfire, or whatever. Luckily, we haven't had to use it very often, but it's always nice to know it's there in case you need it. Now we can go to the next slide. So these are just a lot of numbers, and this will be available on the website starting tomorrow morning if you want to review it again. But this just sort of shows you what the balances will be doing during the year from the end of this year to the end of next year. So emergency fund, like I say, is capped. The only additional money that goes in the emergency fund is any interest or investment income that we make in that fund. So we're projecting that to have a balance of $950,000 at the end of next year. The capital budget, we started 748. We fund it with 721 out of your assessment. We'll be spending about 500,000 out of there to replace items into next year. And so that ends up at a balance of 969. Infrastructure, like I said, that's sort of an in and out account, but again, we're looking to, it will start at 433 and probably end at 440. It stays consistent. The amenity fund right now is 5.5 million. We're projecting to get another $1 million next year, which is approximately 85 home sales next year. Expenditures of 2.195 million. And again, we'll spend more out of the 1.75. Again, we're assuming that we're going to borrow all that money. We may not. So that 2.15, maybe more than that if we end up using more of the amenity fund than what we budgeted and not borrow the whole 1.75. And a lot of that I think will be driven by, how many sales we have. If we have a record, we budgeted for 80. If we had a record year next year and sell 140, we might decide that we don't want to take a loan, or we're going to take half that. We don't know yet. So this is taking the worst case scenario. So we'd still end up with about a $4.3 million amount in the amenity fund at the end of 2023. The real property is a new fund. It's a subcategory of the amenity fund, and we call it the real property fund. And what we've been doing is taking a small percentage of the amenity fund each year and putting in this real property fund, so that if and when buildings, especially some of the smaller buildings, administration building, maintenance buildings, need to get a renovation or repair, we have the funds to do that. Because currently buildings since they have a longer period of life than 30 years, are not calculating our reserve funding. So we wanted to sort of have a separate subcategory within the amenity fund for our buildings. So we started that this year, and we'll slowly increase that every year going forward. So you'll see there in the numbers that it's still a very healthy reserve balances. That you add them all up, we'll have about $6.5 million of cash in our reserves. And that's including after paying for the Activity and Wellness Center. And again, all depending on what we do with that $1.75 million loan. So these are just some of the areas that we talked about in the infrastructure where they go. Roads, we spent about $421,000. Culverts, $130,000. Forest management, this next year will be $142,000. Lakes and dams, very important one, $34,000. And other, which is normally storm damage, whether it be storms that come through, blow a lot of trees and so forth. Even though we do all that work and do all that removal with our own people, there's a cost associated sometimes with we can only pile up the debris so much at the Wantesca debris area. Usually 2 or 3 times a year, we have to start piling it up and bringing it to the landfill. There's a cost associated with that. So the total in the infrastructure next year will be $794,000 in expenses. There are 2 projects besides the big one that we're looking to do next year. We're working with the fishing club to build an additional dock down at Ottagahi, and they want it for a covered fishing area. I don't know why they need a cover in Transylvania County for fishing, but that's looking at $20,000. That's a combined effort. That project will cost more than that, but the fishing club, because they collect dues, they always help us and offset that cost. That overall project might be 30 or something, but they'll take up the difference, whatever it is over 20. The tennis court area, the area that's a social gathering area where the asphalt is deteriorating quite a bit, large cracks in it. Obviously, people know that area is not the most suitable for that area because it does have a lot of give and take with the ground. But we're going to redo that with fiber enhanced concrete instead of asphalt next time to hopefully get a better result on that. That's $25,000. Then obviously the A&W, which was just approved at the $3.9 million. And then just what do we call out of the regular capital items going into next year? The clubhouse, this clubhouse was budgeted to be repainted this year. We obviously decided not to do that until we knew what was going to happen with the Activity and Wellness Center. So what we'll do is we'll tie the clubhouse painting project into the A&W painting project. So they'll either be similar or be able to work together. We'll decide that as we go, but we'll at least get the 2 buildings so they're compatible. So we'll do that at the same time we do the painting project on the A&W. We need to replace one of the fairway mowers on the golf course, rough mowers. Who would have thought in today's world that a rough mower is $117,000, and you can't get it till September of next year. But anyway, and then we have the top kick truck, which is basically a big GMC truck that carries the overseed sprayer like we use on the road banks when we seed the road shoulders after we re-level them. And then the golf cart, basically Club Carol, which is a little utility vehicle, which is $34,000. And those have all been accumulated over the years. So those monies are all there in the capital fund already. So what happens next? So we have our next meeting is October 18th at 3 p.m. where the board will vote on whether to move forward with this proposed budget or not. Assuming that they vote in favor of this proposed budget, we would send this out to the community on October 24th. And we do the same thing as we do almost every year. We'd have the budget presentation, the budget summary, and the FAQ document all on the website and also within the email that we send out so that you can click it and review anything you want to review. That will stay out for vote, which are for 30 days, which what our documents require. So on November 28th, the budget, the ballots will be due. The election committee already has their meeting scheduled for December 2nd to count those votes. Once they are counted, an e-blast will be sent out to the community with the results. And then on December 5th, which will be basically, it's always a normal quarterly meeting that the board has the first week of December. They'll announce the budget results as well, but technically once the vote's done, it's done. But we just do that to get it officially recorded in the minutes. So that basically sums up where we are. There is one more slide. So what happens next? We have our normal waiting period, we like to call, where we send the budget out or present the budget like we do today. We ask people to send in their questions in the next couple of weeks so that we can respond to those questions. And we'll use that as part of our FAQ. But all these things, again, align with our strategic plan, our comprehensive master plan, realizing that budgets are just guidelines. And in today's world, it's very difficult to have a solid, concrete type budget. It's a very fluid thing that we work in today's world. But please send in your questions to cfpoa@countyfalls.com by Thursday, October 14th at 5 p.m. so that we have the meeting on October 18th. We would be prepared to answer all those questions at that meeting. So with that, we will open the room for questions. Questions, comments? Yes, ma'am. What I'll do is I got to stand here, don't I, Robert? I'll get out of. Yeah, if you can stand up and go to the microphone would be great so that we can, is the microphone on?
Yeah.
Okay. Because this way the people on the Zoom can hear you.
One question, you had mentioned the 5.45% increase. Does that also increase the 12 grand buy-in?
No, the buy-in is going to go up $500 going from, no, we kept it the same, right, Joe? Yeah. So the 10.5 is still the same.
Okay, perfect. And also the short-term rental fees for Airbnb stays. Did you say that was going up another amount? Right now, I think it's at 150 per stay.
The rental stayed at the 150, but we did increase some of the storage numbers by $50. We just grouped them all together in that one slide, but the rentals is the same.
So for an owner that's doing a short-term rental,
150
stays the same. Perfect. Okay, thank you.
Yep. I could tell you're a realtor. Yes.
Hi, Steve Kimmel. I just have a general question. If member has a proposal for a capital or even a sub-capital item, say a park enhancement or something like that, what would be the process to submit that for consideration?
Okay, thank you, Steve. So there is a capital form, we call it, a capital idea form that you can request for myself or Chris in administration. And it's basically a 2-page document which asks, describe the project or describe what you're thinking. Try to give us at least a ballpark figure if you can on what you think it might cost, knowing that you're not a contractor or anything else. How many people you think might support it or not support it, so forth, so on. And then that's submitted to myself. Then I take it from there and just saying, wow, this sounds like a pretty good idea. I think we should look into this more. And then I bring it to, I copy the facility planning committee and the finance committee on that document and say, hey, look, I'm going to go ahead and start looking into this. And I'm also going to recommend to the facility planning committee that they look into this as well. We're actually in the middle of one of those right now where a member submitted something last month to myself. And they submitted to me and the finance and the facility planning committee as well. But I haven't signed off on it yet because there's some potential issues with it. But anyway, that's how the practice would work. So it goes through me. I'm sort of the gatekeeper, and then goes to the committees for research. Anyone? Ferris? Anyone? Bueller? Nope. Okay. Well, we thank you for taking your time out this afternoon in a busy, nice day like today. And we appreciate, again, if you have any questions or comments, cfpoa@connesyfalls.com or cfpoa@comporium.net, whichever one you want to use.